In mid-1941, the United States was a nation committed to neutrality. The American public relied on two vast oceans as geographic shields, convinced that the wars consuming Europe and Asia could not reach their shores. This map of the Pacific illustrates the economic pressure that changed the calculation. In response to Japan's expansion across Asia, the U.S. froze Japanese assets and enacted a total oil embargo. With no domestic supply, Japan's military reserves began to drain, forcing a choice between withdrawal or a desperate seizure of new resources. To secure the oil and rubber of Southeast Asia, Japan had to move south. But the U.S. Pacific Fleet, anchored in Hawaii, sat directly on the flank of that expansion route, a constant threat capable of severing Japan's lifeline to those resources. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the commander of the Japanese Combined Fleet, knew Japan lacked the industrial scale to win a long war against America. He proposed a preemptive strike to paralyze the Pacific Fleet, believing that a sudden, overwhelming loss would force an isolationist America to negotiate rather than fight. The plan was a gamble on the American character. Yamamoto assumed that, as a democracy, the United States would not have the stomach for a prolonged global conflict if its primary naval force was crippled in a single morning. The United States was not blind to the danger. Through the MAGIC program, cryptographers had broken Japan's highest diplomatic codes. Washington was reading Tokyo's communications and knew that a major offensive in the Pacific was imminent. But that intelligence was trapped in silos. The decoded messages were fragmented across competing departments in Washington and filtered through a rigid hierarchy that never fully shared the raw data with the commanders stationed in Hawaii. Admiral Husband E. Kimmel, the commander of the Pacific Fleet, was left to operate on incomplete summaries. He worked under the assumption that if Japan struck, the blow would fall on the Philippines or Malaya, not on his own harbor. General Walter Short, the Army commander, similarly focused on the wrong threat. Interpreting the vague warnings from Washington as a directive to prevent local sabotage, he ordered his aircraft to be parked wingtip to wingtip on the runways, inadvertently turning them into static targets for an air raid. The United States had intercepted enough data to know an offensive was coming, but the institutional failure was one of imagination. A system built on the assumption that Hawaii was an untouchable fortress could not process the signals that it was actually the primary target. In late November, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers moved into the North Pacific. They maintained absolute radio silence, navigating through fog and winter storms to approach Hawaii from the north, where they were least expected. American planners believed Pearl Harbor was protected by geography. Conventional torpedoes required deep water to level out. In 40 feet, they'd bury themselves in mud. Japan bypassed this by attaching wooden fins, stabilizing the weapons to pull out of their dive. Warning signs appeared as the sun rose on December 7th. At 6:45 a.m., the destroyer USS Ward sank a Japanese midget submarine near the harbor entrance, but the report was weighed slowly by a chain of command used to false alarms. At 7:02 a.m., Army radar operators spotted a massive formation of aircraft approaching from the north, the largest blip they had ever seen on their equipment. But because they lacked the context of an imminent threat, the officer in charge relied on a safe assumption. He dismissed the incoming formation as a scheduled flight of friendly B-17 bombers and told the operators to ignore it. At every level, from the radar shack to the admiral's office, procedural friction and psychological bias rejected the reality of the attack until the first bombs actually hit the ground. Just before 8 a.m., the first wave of 183 aircraft hit. Within minutes, the clustered American planes on the airfields burned on the runways, stripped of their ability to launch a counterattack. Torpedo planes and bombers then swarmed Battleship Row. A modified naval shell pierced the forward magazine of the USS Arizona, triggering a cataclysmic explosion that killed 1,177 sailors and Marines in a single second. A second wave of 171 planes arrived 50 minutes later to finish the job. Ships capsized in the oily water, trapping hundreds of men inside hulls that were rapidly filling with smoke and seawater. By 10 a.m., the core of the Pacific Fleet's battle force was reduced to wreckage. 188 aircraft were destroyed, and 2,403 Americans were dead. As a tactical strike, the Japanese operation was an unparalleled success. In under 2 hours, they had achieved complete surprise and executed their mission with surgical precision. But while the tactical execution was perfect, the strategic logic was flawed. Japan had won the battle, but they had targeted the wrong assets to win the war. This tactical map of the harbor reveals a critical oversight. While the battleships were pinned in their berths, the American aircraft carriers were out at sea. Japan had just demonstrated that mobile carriers could project power across an entire ocean to strike a fleet. By missing the American carriers, they left the only vessels capable of retaliating with that same long-range power. Even more critical was the decision to withdraw without a third wave. The Japanese bombers had focused on ships, but left the harbor's vital repair shops and massive oil tank farms almost completely untouched. Because the fuel and dry docks survived, the United States could salvage and repair its fleet on site. Ships that Japan believed were destroyed were eventually patched up and returned to the front lines far faster than Tokyo had ever anticipated. By measuring success in sunken battleships rather than destroyed infrastructure, Japan secured a spectacular morning of victory while ensuring their own eventual defeat. Japan's biggest mistake was its assessment of American resolve. Instead of forcing a treaty, the surprise attack instantly unified a divided, isolationist nation. The sucker punch created a monolith of rage that would soon transform the entire U.S. economy into a war machine. President Roosevelt's declaration of war was followed days later by Germany and Italy, plunging the United States into a global two-ocean conflict that would reshape the map of the world. The fear ignited by the attack also led to a dark domestic collapse. Driven by suspicion, the U.S. government authorized the forced removal and internment of over 120,000 Japanese Americans, a collective punishment that stands as the war's most immediate human rights crisis at home. To prevent another such failure of intelligence, the United States eventually centralized its scattered bureaus. This reckoning birthed the CIA and the permanent national security apparatus that defines American power today. In 2 hours, Japan won a tactical battle, but also triggered its own destruction. The strike ended the era of American isolationism and forced the creation of a centralized security state, forging the global military superpower that still exists today.